Hi, Charles from Fabertec. Today I wanted to discuss tube cutters. After the exhibition, MAC exhibition in 2026 in April, month ago, from around 230 leads, half of them, around 100, were very interested in the tube cutters. Probably because our entry price was pretty low at 70,000-80,000 for the T2 model, and a little bit more for the T4, much heavier duty with lots of options like beveling, loading, unloading, static cutting, and different options. With the tube cutters, it's not so simple as you can imagine with the flat sheet cutters, where we're just specifying kilowattage, size of the table, a couple of small options, but more or less they are stock machines which we're just adding the laser source dependable on your cutting needs, and laser head if we're upgrading to 12-20 kilowatt. With the tube cutters, I need a little bit more information from you. For example, when we're designing tube cutter, T4 especially, or higher models, I need to know a lot about your production, a lot about your tubes, the weight of the tubes, what you're planning in 6, 12 months, maybe 2 years, what is the length of the loading area, what is the outgoing element, maximum length, what you'll be going to do product-wise. How many cuts you're gonna do? Do you need zero tailing? Do you need third chuck, fourth chuck? Do you need beveling? Do you pre-welds? There is a lot that goes into tube cutter to design it exactly for your purpose, for your products in your company, and so it's gonna be ready for anything you're gonna throw at it for the next 5-10 years. Of course, we can give off-the-shelf product, but probably in 6 months' time, when your projects are gonna pump up, they're gonna grow, and you're gonna maybe do subcontracting or maybe get new projects, your existing tube cutter may not cope with that due to, for example, weight, thicker webs and flanges or fillets on the I-beams. Maybe you want to cut something more sophisticated. Maybe you want to do exactly 2.9 meters elements from 6-meter tube, and to have a maximum usage, we need to maybe extend the loading area by 20-30 centimeters. So everything matters in that scenario. So a couple of questions which I always ask you about the tube cutter and your product. For example, one of the clients from the exhibition, Ryan, he's just gonna be doing storages for the agricultural environment, RHS 50 by 50, 75 by 100. So very small elements with maximum 2-3 millimeters wall. So then, for that product, perfectly, T2, it's gonna be suitable, it's gonna be, enough for his production with 240 millimeter diameter of the chucks. But let's say another client, he came to me, I want to cut 100 by 200 RHS, 6 millimeter wall. But then I went on the survey, and then I noticed another beam, bigger beam, 300 millimeters beam. And then it's like, yeah, we were thinking about manufacturing something like that. And suddenly, they can do it just by upgrading, for example, chucks, holders, suspension, and maybe upgrading the lasers. So, couple of questions which I'm gonna ask when we're gonna be designing the tube cutter. First and foremost, what is gonna be the loading area lengthwise? It may be 6, 7.5, 9 meters, 12 meters, all dependable what you're purchasing. For some of you, 6 meters is gonna be perfectly fine. Some of the clients, they ask me about 9 meters, but then in the back of their head, they're mentioning, oh, maybe 12 meters for that element. So it's not gonna upgrade the price greatly. It's gonna be, 8, 10, 12,000, but you can have a longer loading area, of course, if your workshop allows. So always think in the future, because we cannot upgrade length of the machine. You have to specify it here and now what we're gonna be doing there. So loading area can be done even bespoke, just for your particular need. The other thing is outgoing area. For example, if you're cutting short elements, we had a clients with I-beams, and it was 376 up to 500 millimeters. Then you don't need third chuck. You don't need even a lot of support on outgoing section, because they're long. They're not gonna be sagging, they're not gonna be bending on that length. But anything longer than 1.5 meter, or we need servo support, so shelves which gonna support the element to prevent sagging, or third chuck which gonna collect element and provide a proper support together with the holders, with the tables which gonna be supporting middle of the element. So very important, think now and 12 months in the future, what your final product is going to be outgoing of the machine. So we can predict, we can build the machine to your purpose. Another thing, what is the weight per kilogram of your every element in your wildest dreams? It may be, 20 kilogram per meter, then the T2 is perfectly fine. But we have clients who came to us with quotation from some Chinese factory, and they're gonna be cutting 1.1 ton elements, 12 meters long. And the chucks were designed as 440 kilogram load. So it's clearly, you can see that it's not made for this purpose. So that's why I'm asking you a lot of questions, what's maximum weight, maximum web thickness, maximum flange, fillets. We calculating everything to the second decimal point to make sure that everything is gonna work for 5-10 years, not just for a year or two when your warranty is gonna run out. So very important, in the load of the machine, we calculate the jaw, we calculate the middle chuck, the third chuck or the fourth chuck, dependable of course on your needs. And we calculate maximum load plus the rotation of the chuck, how quickly it can move, how many rounds per minute. That's important. When you're cutting very small elements, you need fast changes, fast rotation to accommodate for quick laser cut on the small elements. But if you're doing I-beams, structural sections, U-channels, RHS, very heavy elements, you don't need 300 rounds per minute. So of course, then we're changing the gears and the servo drives to accommodate. So everything is like a one package. So we calculate 20, 30 elements in the machine to work in perfect unison. So nothing is wear down, there is no stress, everything works as it's supposed to be, with even 40, 50% of spare load, spare speed, spare resistance to make sure that the machine is gonna work for ages. So that's another question which I'm gonna ask you. Load, maximum load, length, that's how we calculate the weight, the load on the machine. Another thing, with the longer loading area, like 12 meters or even 15, 18, we need more supports. On the T2, we have a simple pneumatic supports with the nylon wheel, which you adjust to the element manually. But on the T4, there are servo motors with automatic rise and fall, and they adjusting to every element. May it be tube, may it be square element, so they're gonna move and fall up and down according to the element which you loaded and you specify in the controller. So that's also very important in calculating maximum load per machine, per element, per chucks, per servo motors. Same goes for the outgoing. So, for example, one client asked for 12 meters loading, 12 meters outgoing, 3-chuck machine. The same, we have to copy left side to right side. So if the elements, for example, gonna be 1.5 ton, we have to redo the whole body which holds the chucks. Because with the greater load, greater weight on the machine, the typical, for example, 400 kilogram load would not work with 1.2, 1.5 tons. So all of the bed, all of the structure is gonna be upgraded with the runners, with the linear bearings, everything is gonna be pumped up to accommodate for particular needs. So loading area, outgoing area sorted. Now we're going more into technology, kilowattage of the laser. Of course, you need to accommodate for thickness of your elements. So for example, if you're gonna be cutting 4 or 5 millimeters, then perfectly fine, 2-3 kilowatt is gonna be fine. But again, if it's gonna be 5 tubes per day, or if it's gonna be 60 tubes per day, if it's 60, if it's, major cuts per day, then you need to pump up the kilowattage to allow you to cut faster, even thinner elements. Now, when we're going to the next option, which is beveling, and creating pre-welds, of course, you have to accommodate 50% extra for the laser power to allow for cuts. Let's say 10 millimeter mild steel, you need to cut 15 millimeters on 45 degree. So, of course, it can be 4-6 kilowatt laser, and again, coming back to the amount of tubes, structural beams, elements you're gonna be cutting per day. Not only today, but what's gonna happen in 6-12 months, because you'll catch up with some new orders, and your typical daily quota is gonna be completely changed, positively to the more elements. So beveling option, It comes also with something called static cutting. So you have approximately 280 millimeters extra axis where laser cuts along the tube without moving the main chucks, the main jaw, the main tube. Of course, if it's lightweight, you're not using a lot of power, you're not using a lot of electricity. But if it's structural beam, 1 ton, 1.5 ton, as you can imagine, moving all of the shear mass in and out just to cut a couple of holes, you will notice the electricity going up when using the machine. So this 280, 300 millimeters extra axis on the beveling option is going to help you reduce it greatly because the laser head is just moving with a small servo motor movement and cutting anything on the tube without moving the big tube, aside from, of course, turning to other sides, to other walls, flanges, webs. So with beveling options, we can go 45 degree in every direction, so that's additional to axis. You can do pre-welds, you can do, a proper 90 degree with preparation for the welding. You can have the final size of the element with the 45 degree, because as you can imagine, if you're cutting straight, it may be 1-2 millimeters shorter for welding. So it's saving a lot of labor for your welders in the long run when you're doing, 30, 40, 50 tubes per day. And of course, beveling option is extending slightly the width of the main body where the cutting is happening to allow for this operation. Now, the next thing you have to think is loading area and unloading area. So what we can do, there is 2 typical ways of loading platforms. One may be flat with the trains driving elements with the upstand which you position to the width of your typical elements. So if it's wide beams, you're going to have 6, 7 loaded on the brackets. But of course, if it's 20, 40, 50 millimeters, you can change upstands and you can fit even 15, 20, dependable of course on the width of the tubes. That's typical chain loading. Or if you're doing small elements, very lightweight, you can do strap loading, which they just gonna rest 30, 40 on them, and they're gonna slowly leave the straps and load the elements onto the machine. And of course, with that option, when you have a loading, servo motors, which are acting as a supporting element, also have a jaws which can center the element, so the clamp is gonna always clamp it exactly in the center. So loading operation is literally by a press of 1 button, automatically happens, so the operator just need to press 1 button, another tube is loaded and is being cutted. So that's on the loading side. On the unloading side, of course, couple of ways to do it. We can have dependable. If you have a very short elements, we can do a more dense unloading area in here for small elements to fall down to the rubber baskets to prevent any damage. Or we can do copy on the loading area flat section, which is moving all of the elements to the end stop, which is automatically stopping the whole module from dropping elements as soon as the first element reach the beginning of the unloading module. So also different ways to unload the elements. As always, all of the Fabertec lasers, they comes with the full class 1 laser protection. So of course the cutting area is fully enclosed and all dependable on your workshop. For example, if it's dedicated workshop when there is just one operator, you can leave some of the unloading and loading area fully exposed because we have a light barriers, so they're gonna prevent any damage to the operator, any injury. They're gonna stop down the machine when someone's gonna step to the loading area, but also full laser enclosure. It's fully class 1 certified, so you can decide. You may have a full loading and unloading fully enclosed, but if it's in separate workshop, if you want to save a couple of grand, then it's perfectly fine for you to omit the enclosure of the loading and unloading area. Of course, laser is gonna be secure. Again, as always, we're using only Bochu component. So the laser head, the controller, software, everything is from one manufacturer in Shenzhen, which they dedicated the last 25 years to perfect laser cutting parts to perfection. And we don't have any problems. Consumables are cheap as chips. You just cannot go wrong with them. Very easy to program, very easy to diagnose and find out what is going wrong. If anything is going wrong, to be honest. And of course, with different tube cutters, T2, T4, dependable if it's bevel, if it's, what options you're gonna choose. You may have a next iteration of the controller with more options. So for example, not 3000, 5000 version, you can have upgraded laser head dependable on the kilowattage with more details and more gimmicks in there. But generally, they're very simple to run, they're very simple to clean, to make sure the light path is optimal for laser cutting. And what I would like to mention, of course, you can cut on nitrogen and oxygen, but it's also prepared for cutting on compressed air. For example, with one of our Brevit Air Laser Pro compressors, which are multi-stage filtrated, so you can save a hell lot of money on the gas on nitrogen when you're cutting stainless steel aluminum, or on oxy when you're cutting mild steel. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that you don't have to pay for gas thousands of pounds per month. So as some of you who knows Fabertec, you know that we do all of the design in-house. So even if you have a very bespoke or something, which is not standard, which we noticed on the exhibition last April, that there was lots of clients which couldn't find company which deals with bespoke orders. Don't worry, we're gonna take care of you. Of course, it may take a couple of more weeks longer for the design and tweaking process, but we are up to it, and we have the technological capability to do that and predict whatever may happen with extension or with new modules. Coming to the new solutions, there are a couple of new ways to cut. For example, there is a water-assisted cutting with the laser, so it prevents splatter from building up on the internal walls of the tubes, SHS. So that's going to save you a hell lot of money with the internal cleaning, especially when you have 7, 12 meters tubes, which may be a little bit awkward and difficult. Another thing, we're testing now drilling and tapping module, which can automatically drill, put the tap on the holes, so you don't have to post laser cut, prepare that. Another thing which we're testing, it's extra third chuck, which is gonna have a tube which always goes, smaller tube always goes into the cutted tube, and again prevents splatter and collects parts which may get clogged, which may get very a lot of them may be combined in the tube and cause maybe some issues, or maybe fall down out of the holes when the laser is cutting. So that's another solution which we're testing now. One thing I wanted to mention, zero tailing. When you have a third chuck, we have an option of zero tailing. So the third chuck is picking up the tube and middle chuck is moving away, so you can cut at the back of the tube, literally having no wastage. So as you can imagine, on the basic machines like T2, you're always gonna lose around 25 centimeters at the end of the tube, because the jaws has to hold the tube. The middle chuck is there to provide rotation and stability, and of course you're always gonna have some leftover. But with the third chuck, imagine if you're doing 100 tubes per day, that saving is gonna amount to to big piece of cake you saving on the wastage. So yeah, give us a shout. I will ask you those questions. I will be very inquisitive to make sure that we're designing the machine specially for your purpose. As you probably know, Fabertec is, some of the machines are off the shelves, like Amazon, you can get the machine next week, but the tube cutters are pretty bespoke item, and I need to be sure we're providing you with the perfectly designed new workhorse in your workshop, and you don't have to upgrade for the next 5-10 years. And that's my, that's my way of thinking. I was fabricator, and I prefer to buy one piece of equipment, so it's gonna work for next 10 years without any upgrades. So give us a shout. Charles from Fabertec, we're here to help you. Just bye.